To make the splint the correct size, you're going to put landmarks starting, the first one's going to be 2/3 up the side of the forearm. So it's going to be, you divide it in thirds from the styloids to the antecubital fossa, and you're going to want to mark both sides. And then you want to also mark sides, both sides of the wrist crease. And then you also want to do some landmarks at the widest part of the metacarpals. So right here at the first finger, and then at metacarpal 5 by the small finger. And then finally you want to mark in between the index finger and the middle finger, because that's going to be your tallest point. So from there you want to just go ahead and trace the hand or the whole arm where the splint's going to be. And you want to give room so it'll go up about the halfway up the lateral borders of the forearm, and so you kind of want to wing it out since it's like tapered at the end. So after you finish out drawing the pattern, you're going to want to draw an intersecting line from these two, and it's going to be kind of diagonally because that's how your hand creases. And then you're going to want to draw a line from the top one kind of down like this, and then you're gonna want to just finish that out because that's where the thumb is. All right, and that's gonna be a good guide for when we start cutting. So once you cut out the shape of your pattern all the way around, you're gonna want to cut the flap for the thumb so that you're gonna start down at this one and cut up to that line. And then this, you're not going to want anything pokey on your splint, so I just go ahead and cut that off because you're going to want that to be molded around. All right. Once you have your pattern cut out, you can place it on your splinting material and trace it out. We're not going to cut it until after we heat it because it's much easier to cut after you heat it. So once you trace it, we're going to go ahead and place it in the heating pan. So after it's been heated for about a minute or so, you're going to want to take it out and lay it flat and dry it off. It's going to be a little warm to touch, just beware. And then you can go ahead and start cutting out your pattern. And it's also good if you do longer cuts. That one probably wasn't the best example. Because that way you won't get those little edging marks, because those can be hard on the skin. So you want your cuts to be as long as possible. So once you have the shape of your splint cut out, we're going to go ahead and start forming it. So you're going to want to do it supinated. Sorry for my cat scratches. And place the splint on top of your hand on the volar aspect. And you're going to go ahead and turn that thumb away from you and start shaping it around. So you want to make sure your wrist is in slight extension and all the degrees and measurements are in the document that Lindsay provided. So you want to just go ahead and start shaping it and form-fitting it. Once you have it fitted to you, you want to go ahead and smooth out all the edges, and this might require it to be heated again. So sorry again, mine's a little wonky. I had to go from a splint that was already made and melted down. So any of the corners like this that are a little sharp, and then any web spacing, you're going to want to go, oh, and the edges, you're going to want to go ahead and just wing those out. So you can heat it like this for the bottom part that's more proximal to you. And just beware, it's going to be a little hot. And when you put it on, you can just go ahead and wing it out. That way it won't cause any pinching or irritation right up against the skin. And then go ahead and do that for all of the little spacing in the web spacing and around the edges. Finish fabricating your splints, we're going to move on to making the straps. So you're going to make one that's proximal, a wrist strap, 2 on the hands, 1 for the metacarpals, 1 for the phalanges, and then also a thumb splint. So to make the straps, you have your hook and your loop. The hook is the more rough Velcro and the loop is the softer one. I remember it because the hook is more what hooks it to the splint, and then the loop is what loops around your arm. For the loop that's smaller, I just cut the 2-inch loop down the middle this way, long ways. And then I use that for the metacarpals, the digits, and then also the thumb. So it's helpful if you round out the edges of all the loop because that will avoid more snagging and irritation against the skin. So to put it on, I usually start by putting on the proximal one first because it's just a good grounding and sturdying loop. It really just like sets it on there. And then for the thumb, you want to go ahead and put one side on, and you want it to go around the proximal phalanx of the thumb because that's where it's more sturdy. And then for the next one, I usually go ahead and do the metacarpals, and that you want it nice and snug when you put all these on. And you just wrap it around wherever you place your things, your hooks, and you might have to adjust where you put them. I had to move mine a couple times, but if you just like peel it off, it'll stick right back on. So for the digits, you want it to go around the most proximal phalanx. Oops, sorry. And then that'll be pretty sturdy as well. So for the wrist one, you have 2 choices. You can either put it around just laterally like that, and then there's still some motion in the wrist though. So it's more sturdy if you do it at a diagonal. And if you have like a really bony or prominent styloid process, you can always cut a hole in the loop as well to make it not quite as irritating on the skin. So there you have it. That is your resting hand splint. Thanks for watching.